everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host Kushalmehra. All right, time to talk about the budget. The budget was just announced and explained by the Honorable Finance Minister on the floor of the House. And to talk about it, I have uh, back on the podcast because this time I had decided कि मैं budget की podcast Monika के साथ करूंगा. Monika is a famous author of the book Let's Talk Money. Monika, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Kushal. Kushal, always great to be on your podcast. Yeah.
अरे मगर एक story before we start. So on the day of the budget, Monica was busy on mainstream media. I remember her tweet. She's like, I am tired. I'm not going anywhere. I saw that tweet. I sent her a message. I was like, देखो अभी तो ठीक है मगर बाद में तो आपको आना पड़ेगा.
उस दिन ज़्यादा हो गया था यार. I don't know, people kept pressing. I kept saying yes. फिर finally जब count किया, so 7 live TV shows, 1 column, and I've been having some neck issues. So by the time I went back to my physiotherapist the next day, he said, "आप करके क्या आए हो? Like, what did you do in one day? What did you do?" I said 12 hours of this. तो ज़्यादा हो गया था.
Yeah, I totally understand this, but okay, let's start with this. So there or maybe I'm totally misreading this, but at least in the last 4 years I see a significant effort on the side of the government of India, this current government of India, to reduce maybe the overall importance of the budget itself. As you know, पहले कैसे होता था, budget है, ये होगा वो होगा, major announcements होगी. But now what I see as a trend line is that even within this government, because there has been part one and part two of this government now in the second term, if you compare from the first term to the second term, I feel now the government does not keep all the big announcements just till the budget. It does the budget and it disburses its announcements over the year. Am I right in understanding that the overall importance of the budget has reduced in that sense?
You're absolutely right, Kushal. It's reduced in many ways. And I'll come to your point of a deliberate taking away from the drama around the budget announcements by this government and especially by the FM Nirmala Sitaraman. But as it goes, once GST, so let's, what is it that the budget does? There is, government has to get receipts, it's called revenue, it has to spend, and there is tax revenue which comes in. Government puts taxes on different things. There is direct tax which people like you and me pay on our incomes, on capital gains, वो उसको direct tax कहते हैं, companies देते हैं उसको. और दूसरा होता है indirect tax. You buy something, there is always that GST on it now. Earlier it used to be sales tax. So there is this whole piece of the indirect tax where there used to be a lot of announcements in the budget earlier. This entire piece was taken out when GST was introduced. So GST is a separate conversation, but what the GST did is to remove this entire conversation of this will get expensive, that will get cheaper, the entire lobbying of the industry to get concessions on indirect taxes. That entire stress and drama has gone because GST now is a council with every state having representation and they fight that out. So GST का पूरा जो खेल था जहाँ पे इतनी लॉबिंग होती थी इंडस्ट्रीज की, कंपनीज की, वो सारा निकल गया है. तो a lot of the underlying uh, uh, manipulations of government budget proposals which had to do with the corporate sector sort of went away with the indirect tax piece being taken out. So in itself now, if you think about it, हमारा कितना 45 लाख करोड़ का टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर है, 45 ट्रिलियन, ठीक है. उसमें से so there is a deficit, there is the government doesn't earn enough, etc. So they borrows. But it is not that this every budget doesn't come in a vacuum, it's a continuation. तो अगर आप पिछले साल पेंशन्स के ऊपर 4% खर्च कर रहे थे तो इस साल भी अराउंड 4 ही करोगे ना खर्च. यू विल नॉट suddenly increase it to 8 or decrease it to 2. There's a continuum in the revenue streams. So if direct taxes is 15% of your total budget size, it's not going to very much change, right? So almost 90% of the budget is already known. 5% में सारा खेल होता है, because, right, because in that you will decide additional taxes, reliefs, expenditures here, there. So once you recognize that, then you understand that there is very little actually to be done in the budget statement itself. So it becomes more of a policy statement, a direction that the economy is going to take. So if you start decoding, and you're absolutely right, there has been this effort to reduce the drama, to reduce the lobbying points in the budget entire exercise, so that whatever you want to do, you don't need to do it through the budget. So it's more of a directional statement. For example, I think Budget 21, FM Sitaraman said that essentially to the effect that it's not the government's business to be in business, or words to that effect. And other than certain important sectors, we want to privatize everything. So, and then you see the budget proposals in that context, and you see whether or not they are doing what they are saying. So you're absolutely right that entire drama around the budget, it's more a media event right now, where people are talking कि ये standard deduction बढ़ेगा, ये ऐसे ऐसे होगा, क्या होगा. But um, there isn't that much which it used to be earlier, in terms of the drama around the budget as far as the government is concerned.
Which is honestly, that is how a sane society should function. I did not know the budget. I mean,
Correct. It's, I think, only in India where it's such a song and dance.
yeah, I mean, पता नहीं, everything has to be, over dramatic in our country, as if नहीं हुआ तो लोगों को लगता है अरे पैसा वसूल नहीं हुआ, इतना हमने खर्चा किया टीवी, केबल टीवी का, तुम तो कुछ कर ही नहीं रहे हो उधर पार्लियामेंट में. I don't understand. Like, imagine before the budget came out, I had mocked the budget. I had not, I do not know, but I was like, I know what the opposition remark is also going to be. Like,
Yeah.
that is the sad state. Just like अडानी अंबानी का बजट है, गरीब किसान को कुछ नहीं मिला, मिडिल क्लास पिस गया. ये तीन बातें बोली जाएंगी और खत्म हो जाएगा. But imagine, this is the paucity of ideas in our country. The opposition should be, reading the entire financial policy of this government and hitting back. That's what we expect from the opposition.
Correct.
इधर वो तीन लाइन
And
में मतलब
it
वही
was
हो रहा है.
it was very funny, and Kushal, you heard that one, that ये इनका election budget है, pre-elect. So it's a budget which is going to prep the country with freebies. But look, they've done nothing for the poor, for the farmers, for the women, for this and that. So in the same breath, they're contradicting themselves and saying it's an election budget, but look, they did nothing for the farmers, for the poor, for this. So how is it an election budget? Right? So they're not even thinking a little bit deeper. So where is the rigor of looking at the numbers and saying, hello, why is it that the union government is spending so much on agriculture subsidies, whereas the right to tax or not lies with the states? Do they even know this? Do they think about this? That subsidies to center diye ja raha hai, but the right to tax or not, because of the way the constitution is, belongs to the states. So, isn't there a contradiction in the fact that the government has to spend, the union government is spending on things like education, health, but finally the execution is in state. So, in my, I don't know why there's, they don't go a little deeper and say, look at capital expenditure. For let's take it capital expenditure. Fantastic that there has been this whole uptick in the budget money being used. And I want to take just 2 minutes to explain why this is important. And I want to explain it in terms of our own budgets. Okay, which is to say that we also take loans. घर बनाना है किसी को तो वो लोन लेते हैं, गाड़ी खरीदनी है तो कुछ लोग लोन लेते हैं. So now people are taking loans to travel. When you eat dinner and use your credit card and you don't pay it back in the time, you've taken a loan to eat dinner. So there is good loans and there's bad loans. A good loan creates an asset, which has future income stream possibility, which has the possibility of increasing in value so that your money grows. And there is a bad loan that I'm consuming something right now. So when the government deficit is going largely towards revenue expenditure, it's spending on salaries, it's spending on pensions, it's spending on subsidies, freebies. There's very little money left to build capital. What this government has done is that the capex has gone up, especially during the corona period, and that's been, I cannot emphasize how important and what a bold step that has been to say, look, we're going to start building assets now, and we're going to squeeze this expenditure here, we're going to tax the rich Indians more. But unless the government puts in the capital expenditure, we are not going to get GDP growth. So they've dramatically improved what we are spending on asset creation, roads, railways, ports, which is fantastic. But execution will happen only in the states. So when you go to the government site, which tracks the, well, I don't know how many, 1782 projects, I may get the number wrong, but uh, it's definitely more than 1,000 centrally sponsored projects. But implementation is going to be in the state. So what is going to be the delay because of land acquisition, NGO saying कि इधर से तो हाथी जाते हैं, वो पेड़ इतना अच्छा है, so all those kind of cases start to come up, और फाइनेंसिंग में प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है. So you're seeing a 30 to 35% delay. 30 to 35% of the projects are delayed on time. The cost overrun is twice, thrice, four times because of that delay and other things. So I would imagine that a good opposition would pick up on something like these issues कि आप कर तो रहे हो, पर finally निकल क्या रहा है वहां से. I'm not seeing any sensible conversation around digging a little bit deeper into what the government is spending on, and then trying to say what is finally the efficacy of all this money. So yeah, I agree. It's a very sort of a low level conversation. कि ये उसको अडानी अबानी को दे दिया. ये, I think they just need to go beyond that.
Fair enough. Now, first, I'm going to ask you some specific questions. But before that, let's say if I was to, because I think that is so for you, and I'm going to start with the negative first. Is there a miss in this budget? I know the hits everybody wants to talk about, but I want to start with the misses. Do you think the government has missed out on something?
So I'm not going to do the very big macro sort of misses, but in terms of what probably a lot of your viewers and listeners might identify with, I would have imagined that a little bit of a simplification of the capital gains tax. So I'll just explain this very briefly. When you build assets, gold, real estate, stocks, even debt funds, for example, the profit that you make, difference between buying price and selling price, is taxed. The tax rate depends on how long you hold that asset. Okay. So short term rates are usually higher, long term rates are usually lower, because you want people to stay long term in investments. The tenor over which different asset classes go long term differs, and there seems to be no logic to that. So equity becomes long term at 1 year, real estate at 2 years, and debt at 3 years, gold at 3 years. So there is no, I'm not seeing a sort of a rationale for this difference in equity, real estate, and debt. Real estate was brought down from 3 years to 2 years to give a boost to the real estate sector. And then the taxation rates also differ. For example, this 1 year equity long term capital gains tax doesn't get the benefit of indexation, which means that you allow your buying price to be inflated so that your profit amount shrinks and your tax amount is less. So there is a whole lot of mess in the way the capital gains is constructed today. I would have expected at least a policy statement to say, we need to sort this out. That was one. And the second was, and I was hoping that we would hear a little bit about it, that Now it's been several years, 5 or 6 years of Ayushman Bharat, which is the 5 lakh rupee medical insurance cover given to the poor, right? We've had enough experience now on the ground to see how the scheme works. I think there was a case to make a co-pay option available for the urban informal sector, which through the eShram portal now the government has a crore, 1.5, 1.7 crore people registered on eShram. So you know who the rural poor are pretty much. It is this missing middle who suffered the worst during the pandemic, which the government very smartly has onboarded onto the eShram portal. They are pretty much outside of this 5 lakh Ayushman Bharat helping hand. And there is the 65, 70 plus population who finds it very difficult to get good health insurance, or if they do get, it is exorbitant. The prices are exorbitant. The health insurance companies like to basically give insurance cover to Iron Man and Iron Women, basically people who are just tough and strong and will never fall ill. So that's their sort of criteria, that you need to have no pre-existing diseases. And so we don't even want to open that box of health insurance. There is market failure in the health insurance sector in India, where the regulator, which is IRDA, has not been able to curb the practices of health insurance companies of either denying cover or denying the payment of the amount. And the hospitals are almost unregulated in the sense that there is almost no control on what they can charge. So, does a delivery cost 10,000 rupees or 5 lakh rupees? Does a stent in the heart cost? What does it cost? So, the government has tried in different ways to solve some of these issues, but there hasn't been a solution, because the way that the health insurance is set up is that there's a lot of power not with the individual but with the insurance company and the hospital. So with through the Ayushman Bharat now, there is a very large buyer of insurance, which is the government, and there are service providers, which are hospitals. So now we have an understanding of the rates which are working. So you may not get a five-star hospital bed, but for a general ward bed, we know what these things are going to cost. Uh, there can be an extension of the Ayushman Bharat for with a co-pay for the urban informal and the 65 plus 70 plus, to say that we know what this costs. It is free for the rural, but at cost plus maybe 10%, we will offer this plan to you, 5 lakh, which means that you show up, no questions asked, no nonsense about pre-existing exclusions, waiting periods. You show up and you are covered. We will solve a lot of the slipping back into poverty by the urban informal because of one adverse health uh, instance in a family. And for the seniors, it is just a base over which you can buy a top up, you can do several things. So I felt that probably the time was right to at least announce that we are thinking about it, because they must. That for me was because health costs become a drain, and it really pushes a family over.
Fair enough. Now, okay, so now let's get to the good stuff. But before the good stuff, again, the few questions. So, what do you make about bond indices or India entering the global debt indices?
So um, when you become a part of the index, then automatic allocation comes to you when large funds, pension funds, large investment trusts, vehicles will start to invest. They typically go into an index investing mode. They buy the index. So, inclusion of India into a global debt index will start funneling the savings of the world to Indian bond papers. See, who is going to buy? It's the savings of people outside India, and that money is then available to for use here. Because what is a bond? Somebody is saying that you give me 100, I will give you 10 rupees every year, and then at the end of 10 years, I'll give you 110 back. Right? So you are, they are foregoing the use of that 100 rupees. I'm getting to use it. So I'm using their savings to build capital here. Most of this has been through the equity route. So we have sold our equity to foreigners because because of a variety of reasons our debt market is not so well developed. It's a problem of the RBI largely, but we are seeing a buoyancy starting to happen in the debt market, but at least the government securities market is fairly deep and wide. So you will definitely start to have significant portions of global flows coming into the country. I think a note of caution has been sounded by the finance secretary to say that we will go into it with our rules. With We do not want to open up our country to the sort of tantrums that big flows of money abroad tend to create. So I don't know what exactly the nitty gritty is, but in itself, I think it's a great idea. And India is, we are the fifth largest economy in the world. And if at a nominal rate we grow at 13, 14, 15%, within the next 6 or 7 years, we're the third largest economy. Of course, the bond papers of a third largest economy in the world must be part of the global indices. And if it is not happening, we'll have to see, like, why is it that Indian debt paper, and this is government securities, we're not even saying corporate bonds, definitely should be included.
Fair enough. Okay, what do you make of the cost of capital? So in India, I mean, how do we get our cost of capital down? Like, also, like, would one of the things would be like, do we open a capital account to solve that? This has been a persistent issue if we look at the history of our country, the cost of capital itself. Like, how do we solve this one? Do you think the budget has made certain provisions or shown any indication to going towards that direction?
You mean capital account convertibility?
Yeah, I guess that's what
Yeah.
it is.
At least if there was an announcement, I probably missed it. Um, if anything, they're making it a little more difficult to take money out in terms of that tax that they've put on what you can spend abroad. I have a very different take on the cost of capital in India. So I'll tell you a small story. So I was in Bombay. I was meeting a friend whose friend was setting up a small restaurant in Bombay. And she discussed with me how much it costs over her capital cost to get different licenses, whether it's a license on alcohol or other environmental and F&B licenses. She said I have to add 10% to my capital cost in bribes. There you are. So what is finally, the project will have to generate, so my cost of the business is 10% higher because of the bribes which have to be paid. So we might say that at the top level there is far less corruption than there was earlier, but on the ground it is just still so rampant. So our problem, Kushal, is just this deep demark of corruption, which is so ingrained into everything. If we can somewhere get a hold of that, everything goes down. The prices of why is it that real estate prices are so high? Because everybody has a cut. The project cost escalates because everybody has to be paid.
आपने रियल एस्टेट्स की बात की, सो इन जनरल डू यू थिंक हाई इंटरेस्ट रेट्स वोंट हर्ट? आई मीन, हमारे यहाँ पे थोड़ा ही अभी रेट्स अभी थोड़े बढ़ाए गए हैं लास्ट फ्यू मंथ्स में. इन जनरल जो एक ट्रेंड बोला जाता है कि they tend to hurt the economy. Like, also, don't you think they add the cost for people unnecessarily. Let's say, if whether आपने home loans की बात की, whether college loans or business loans in general, ये सब में भी like why are we not able to do that? क्योंकि इंडिया में एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम, ये भी पॉलिटिकल प्रॉब्लम जो मैंने नोट की है, what it tends to do is the moment you, let's say, slash the rates of fixed deposits, so एक बहुत बड़ा होता है, oh, this government is anti senior citizens. Yeah, this has been a line I've actually heard this line from multiple people who are semi political or full time political. Like, how do you balance this out?
I wish there was a little bit of financial literacy in schools and colleges. And I am at the point where I'm saying, let me just write the curriculum. I don't care who reads it. But can we just have basic financial literacy? So, a 12% PPF return rate is not good when inflation is 14. An 8% PPF rate is fantastic when inflation is 4. That real return that you're getting over inflation is not understood at all. So people are just looking at the number rather than looking at what real return that you're getting over inflation. Because finally, what are we trying to do? We're trying to keep our purchasing power intact. That in the future, my 100 rupees, because of inflation, will buy less. Therefore, the return that I get on my 100 has to beat inflation. So when they say, so I know this period that you're saying that rates were cut and FD rates had fallen, but inflation was actually much lower in that small band of time. And the real return pre corona was excellent. And then I would see stories, oh, bar gaye, lut gaye, ye kya return? I'm saying you're getting a super return because it's real positive. So basic financial literacy is a must everywhere for everybody.
But do you think it should be part of the school curriculum then? Maybe like a proper financial literacy class where after grade 8 or grade 9 maybe, or maybe grade 10, 11, 12, like kids actually are taught this, like okay, ये करने से ये होता है. Do you think we should do that then?
तो टेल मी कुशल, जब आप बच्चे होते हो तो क्या बोलते हैं पेरेंट्स? पढ़े लिखो, कुछ बनो, यू शुड
हाँ.
बिकम समथिंग, यू शुड डू वेल. They say that you should do well. What does do well mean? That you should earn money. So you're spending 18 years of your childhood and prime youth in studying hard and getting those degrees. You're prepping to start to earn. Is there even one class which tells you what to do with when the first salary comes into your bank?
I don't remember any class.
I did a master's in economics from Delhi School of Economics. 5 पेजेस के ना हम लोग ट्रिग्नोमेट्रिक के सॉल्यूशंस निकालते थे हाई मैथ्स के. आई रिमेंबर दैट वी यूज्ड टू गो क्रेजी, वांटेड टू जंप ऑफ समथिंग हाई. 5 पेज के सॉल्यूशंस निकाल रहे हैं हम लोग. So very very tough. Huh? It's the toughest thing I have ever done to pass that master's exam. But after a D school degree in economics, master's, I did not know how to write a check. I did not know how to decode the government budget, which I learned on the job as a journalist. So, somewhere I feel what use is so much of pure theory, where you're building models which, anyways, fail in the real world. I mean, which economist predicted 2008? Which economist predict? So, I'm not even going there. कि वो उसकी merit क्या है इतने beautiful theoretical models बनाने की. But there can be some amount of practical knowledge, and I speak a lot to groups, whether it is lawyers, doctors, especially the engineers, the software guys. So I do talks with them, and it's a common thread that we have worked so hard. We just don't understand what to do with our money, and especially people who are not in structured jobs, they have irregular flows of income. How do I manage this? How do I manage my savings? So I would imagine that a basic course, and make it elective, don't force kids to do it. You choose, you want to learn about money, you do this course. So make it elective, make it part of something that you do other than, I know that school curriculums get loaded with all kinds of social, moral objectives of different governments. But this is something inherently I feel that kids are and especially this new generation who's so much into startups, they want to do businesses, और हम बेसिक जो प्रैक्टिकल फाइनेंस है वो सिखा ही नहीं रहे हैं. So this has actually been a thought in my head that I should just sort of write this textbook, and whoever uses it should use it, whether or not there's a course. It is useful.
Nice, nice. So, in fact, a live viewer had asked this question again. I think this is a vital point. The person has said, why, why don't we publicize or make a user friendly report on the last budget's proposal on various items of expenditure, income vis-a-vis the actual figures? This is actually being done right now in a haphazard way. This, don't you think this will increase accountability, or maybe it is being done in a proper way and this user is not aware of it? Then you can tell us agar ye ho raha hai to.
I think kuch time pehle there used to be an outcome budget. I will have to actually check whether they are still doing that or not. But I think a process of the outcome budget was started to actually map what has happened really in terms of what they said they were going to spend and what actually happened on the ground, and if they were going to spend on this and that, what happened. So it is a little bit haphazard. For example, I'll come back to the capital expenditure, because look, if the money is going to pensions, it's going to pensions. If it's going for interest payments, it's going for interest payments. Uska kya we can just map the number, that is interest payments increasing, is pensions increasing. But the story is in the, especially in these items of, say, the capital expenditure. And for that, I will actually send you the link to the site where it is public disclosure as to how many projects, ministry wise, what is the delay time wise, what is the delay cost wise, what is the average ministry wise delay. And it's quite interesting to see which ministries have an 80% overrun in terms of time, and tripling in terms of cost. So that is public disclosure, but I don't think that is really part of the budget. So yes, somebody needs to stitch the story together to say that this is actually what is happening on the ground.
I think this should be more like a media's job. I mean, why do you expect the government to point it its own flaws? I mean,
But
sometimes I feel
कुशल, मीडिया तो एसईओ कर रहा है, वो क्या करेगा?
that is so true.
आई
Yeah,
मीन
media.
आई एम सॉरी, बट गोल्ड ऊपर जा रहा है, नीचे जा रहा है, वही तो स्टोरीज दिखती हैं.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it is. That's so sad. Actually, our media is doing that. But yeah, but it's not about the media. Now let us get into the good stuff, because I wanted to start with negative things. पहले की जो भी है उन्हीं से deal कर लो. So what do you think were the hits in this budget where you think there was a real impact?
She managed to do a very skilled tightrope walk between not bankrupting the budget, basically being very conservative on the deficit side, which means we want the deficit to be within a certain percentage of the GDP, because we don't want to borrow more. Okay, so in terms of our own finances, if your borrowings go out of control, your interest burden keeps going out of control. So you have to keep the borrowing at a certain percentage within the GDP. Okay, so this time we are projecting it to be 5.9%, which is excellent. So having done that, she's managed to give tax relief to the higher middle class, okay, and a nudge to move to the new tax system. She's managed to give a small savings boost in terms of doubling what they can do in good government guaranteed high return products like the senior citizen savings scheme and the monthly income scheme. And she's found the money for capital expenditure. So I've been tracking budgets for now, like maybe like 2 decades. It's a very skilled approach to doing this. So without giving away too much, she's managed to keep the ship running. She's not uh, she's not even noticing that there's an election next year. And let me tell you one small story. We've got a little bit of a tax buoyancy right now. Direct tax collections in December 22 had already hit 80% of the target for the full financial year 23. 20 to 23 में इतना 80% हो गया था. And we are seeing that economic activity is picking up, so we know that tax revenues are beginning to come. You can use this and do a, let's give freebies, let's give people a feel good because there's election next year. 2008, our budget was in a really good place. Okay, this is just before that crash of 2008. We had done well. There's an election coming in 2009, and there was this gigantic 60,000, 70,000 rupees, 60, 70,000 crore of farm loan waiver, which UPA 1 did. Not only did it set our finances as a country back, but it caused inflation in the next few years of 10, 12%. Okay, so there is always this attempt by an incumbent government who's coming into election year next year, if you see space on the budget to do a big giveaway. The fact that she's not done that, I think both uh, we must. So people who are not doing politics and saying if you like the budget, you're a Sanghi nonsense. If you're not doing that, if you're not following that very narrow, cynical road, we must commend the finance minister. And I mean, Narendra Modi does direct a lot of this. Whether or not they do something on vote of account next year, we still have to see, because that is just ahead of the election. So whether or not they do something to make the farmers or somebody feel better about the coming election, I don't know, but it doesn't sort of fit in with what they have done over the past. Uh, the last election also, we didn't see that kind of a giveaway, and that then ties back into the theme which they go on articulating, which is empowerment over entitlement. So the narrative which is coming through different parts of this government and through the budget is saying we would rather teach you to fish rather than give you a fish. So that for me was a big win, that you've been mature enough to not slip on any of the usual places where most governments might have slipped. So you're spending more on growth. You want, because see, private sector investment. So what happens in an economy? You, in times of distress, when the private sector, again, that's another long story of what happened to the balance sheets of banks and companies. But we're at a place where the bank balance sheets have got cleaned up. The for company balance sheets have got cleaned up, but they are yet not investing. You need the private sector investment to take the baton over from the government to start investing. Why do we need investment? Because investments results in jobs. Jobs result in more consumption, which then encourages where companies make profits. With that profit, they put up even bigger plants, they expand, which means more jobs, more increments, people spend more. So it's a virtuous cycle of growth. But private sector is still not at the place where they're starting that cycle. So the government has to expand, has to extend its spending a little more. If they were to pull it back right now, we are again stuck in this very difficult place where the private sector investment is not coming, the government is stopping to invest. And this growth, which we are seeing beginning to sort of stabilize and take off, gets into real trouble. So that for me was the biggest hit, that you were sensible about how you were going to spend.
Now, something that stood out for me was, and I don't know, I guess अब मैं पॉडकास्ट भी बिजनेस ही होता है इन अ वे. सो अभी ऐसे नहीं बोल सकता एज अ फॉर्मर एंटरप्रेन्योर, बट या मतलब जो पहले करता था वो छोड़ के निकला हूँ.
फैक्ट्री नहीं है ना आपकी, जहाँ पे
हम्म.
सारे इंस्पेक्टर आते हैं.
हाँ, तो फैक्ट्री चलाने वाला आदमी फिर भी ब्रेन तो अभी वैसे ही चलता है. दो तीन चीजें, जैसे 90% ऑफ रिफंड टू बी ग्रांटेड कंसिडरिंग प्रोविजनली एक्सेप्टेड आईटीसी. Earlier this was not allowed, now they have allowed this. I guess this budget has allowed this. This is a huge thing. People don't realize how much of a crunch देखो हर इंसान का कई बिजनेसेस का रिफंड नहीं होता है आईटी का, मगर बहुत बिजनेसेस जो सर्विस में होते हैं जिनका टीडीएस कटता है उनके रिफंड होते हैं, लोगों को ये
हम्म,
रियलाइज नहीं होता है। और वो रिफंड्स अगर आप इवन इफ यू डू अ बिजनेस ऑफ लेट्स से साल का 5 करोड़ से 10 करोड़ 20 करोड़ 30 करोड़ का, मैं 100 करोड़ वाले बिजनेस भी नहीं बोल रहा हूँ टर्नओवर, मैं तो 1 करोड़ से 10 करोड़ की रेंज वाले, उनके रिफंड्स काफी होते हैं।
हम्म,
और वो रिफंड काफी समय अटक जाते हैं क्योंकि फॉर वट एवर रीजन्स, और फिर उनको निकालने के लिए भी एक हरक्यूलियन टास्क होता है। सो आई थिंक दिस
हम्म,
डिसीजन, आई एम जस्ट शेयरिंग माई इनपुट, आई डोंट नो इफ यू फील दिस इज गुड और बैड, बट I thought this was good. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about was certain provisions under CPC were decriminalized. Now,
yeah,
this really made me happy. यार
हम्म,
मतलब यार बिजनेसमैन को चोर तो मत समझो ना, इतना तो बुरा नहीं है बिजनेसमैन, जॉब्स भी तो
हम्म,
दे रहा है। बट
हम्म।
व्हाई डू यू थिंक इट टुक अस सो मेनी इयर्स टू डीक्रिमिनलाइज अ फ्यू थिंग्स, लाइक ऐसा क्यों माइंडसेट है हमारे देश में?
आपने वो सुना होगा जुमला, प्रॉफिट इज अ डर्टी वर्ड।
हाँ।
मैं,
तो
व्हाट डू
सब
आई
तो
से?
करते हैं।
No, but look, the seeds of this idea are so deep and sown so early after our independence and perpetuated through the emergency when the word socialist was introduced in the preamble by Indira Gandhi, that you had a bureaucracy and intelligentsia and the academia firmly believing that government control and was the best thing to happen, and that the average businessman is chore. So आप पिक्चर ही देख लो ना 70s की, दीवार में क्या बोलता है वो? मेरे पास गाड़ी है, बंगला है, शोहरत, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? माँ है। इज अ पोर पुलिस ऑफिसर। बट हाउ डू गेट रिच? यू गेट रिच ओनली बाय बीइंग करप्ट, बाय बीइंग अ स्मगलर, चरस, गांजा, सोना। तो काला पत्थर में क्या था? इविल कोल माइन ओनर, वो चूस रहा है सारे वर्कर्स को। और सोल्यूशन क्या निकाला था? नेशनलाइज हो गई हैं खाने। Of course, we know that the story for the workers became worse when the government took it over. But there is a very deep mindset which believes that profits are bad and all companies, all people who run companies are evil. So you will celebrate a Warren Buffett, you will celebrate a Bill Gates. But should an Indian entrepreneur dare to be number one, two, three, four in the global pecking order of wealth, you just want to pull him down. So this is, it's a very deep sort of view that we have carried over generations, and I think we need to lose it because we are going towards being a mid-income country. So extreme poverty बोलते हैं जिसको $2 per day per capita. The number beneath this is shrinking. It's almost dropped at 45 degrees over the past 15 years. And now it's, now there's debate on whether it is 0 or whether it is 5, whether it is 6. But let's say 5-6% भी अगर है, so coming from 50-60%, we are, if absolute poverty, extreme poverty is down to 5-6%, where has the rest gone? Up. As the economy grows at 15% nominal, where will this go? Even higher. So we are moving, so we need a change in mindset. So I actually do these talks with the college and school kids saying being rich is good. Don't let anybody tell you, don't let people make you guilty about wanting to be rich. How you get rich and what you do with it are moral questions for you, possibly. But being rich in itself, let everybody create wealth, no? So that deep sense of that shows up in the way the laws were constructed. And remember, a lot of these laws are colonial. The DNA of so much of the Indian um, underlying legal and the sort of acts that you see are colonial in their DNA. They did not even change the DNA or a lot of the rules and regulations. They just wrote Government of India over Queen. तो डीएनए तो बदला ही नहीं ना, अपने आप पुलिस को देख लो, किसी को भी देख लो। सो एक जो सस्पिशन होता है रूलर का against who they considered barbarians. That is very manifest in the subtext of the rules and regulations, and that it has to change now. Yeah, ab to bahut time ho gaya.
Yeah, it's weird. Overall, the colonial state clearly was a trust deficit state, and I mean, to be very honest, the current Indian bureaucracy ka setup is very much based on that
नहीं तो डिस्ट्रिक्ट
entire.
कलेक्टर क्या होता है? आई एम सॉरी बट कलेक्टर, you're a like it's a collector of what? Taxes. That's your administrative designation. Why are we not changing that?
Yeah, well, it is what it is. क्या करें अभी? Some people don't change. Okay, so in this whole income tax slab thing, what do you make of this? Welcome move, and everybody seems to be confused about this 7 lakh limit and
Yeah, yeah,
old
yeah, yeah.
regime, new regime. Can you explain that to everyone?
Okay, very briefly. I think budget FY21, um, we got an option to move to a new tax regime where there were no deductions allowed. You could offer your entire um, income for taxation, and there was the different slab rates would apply. They had done the same thing for corporates, but that those corporate rates were slashed heavily. So it made sense for companies to shift to the new tax regime. In the case of individuals, it wasn't that great a benefit. So what they have done this time, what she has done is said that I want people to move to the new tax regime, which doesn't have all the deductions, the web of deductions and rebates and exemptions. So she has given a better tax system with lower taxes should you be willing to give up on the deductions like section 80C जो 1.5 लाख का होता है or the medical deductions or when you send kids abroad for studying or here that interest deduction, so different deductions are there. You give up on all of that, you get a lower tax rate in theory, but each person has to see where they are with the deduction. So there could be a family where uh, it's a mature family in their 40s, home loan is paid off, you're not taking the benefit of the home loan deduction. If your deductions are less, it might help you to migrate to the new system. But if there's a family which is taking every deduction out there, it still makes sense to stay with the old system. So that's very first principles on the two systems. Now, this slabs is like this. Your first 3 lakh of income is tax free in the sense that it's exempt. And after that, your slabs start. Okay, I'm exactly right now forgetting what every slab is, uh, but if your total income is no more than 7 lakh, then you pay no tax. Okay, so if you earn 8 lakh, then you fall, your first three is anyways tax free, then you fall into the slab level. That at every slab there is different rate and you will pay that. But should your income be within 7 lakh, then you get what is called a rebate. So tax is calculated, but it is deemed as tax free. So you end up paying no tax. So the slab begins at 3 lakh, but should your total taxable income stay within 7 lakh, you don't pay any tax because of a rebate. So that's people are getting confused on the slab levels. Slab level is starting at 3.
Fair enough. No, but so I guess that the major confusion for people was based on that. Like, let's say if a person is taking that वो क्या होता है 1.5 लाख की PF की PPF की
That's section
option
80C. Section
80.
80C में आपने अगर spending or investing in certain things like PF, PPF, ELSS schemes आपने करा
Yeah.
है तो आपको वो 1.5 लाख आपकी taxable income से हट जाता है. तो आपके
So
पास ग्रॉस इनकम आती है, उसमें से आप अपने डिडक्शंस निकालते हो, देन यू ऑफर द रिमेनिंग फॉर टैक्सेशन. सो इफ यू आर रिड्यूसिंग द पाई, यू पे लेस टैक्स. दैट्स हाउ अ
yeah,
डिडक्शन वर्क्स.
so the let's say that person who is investing already in that scheme, then should they move to the new regime? I guess that's what most people would want to know, right?
Right. It depends again on. So if you were, say, investing in an ELSS scheme, it's not as if you have to pay the next premium. And again, to do investments for the tax benefit is a really bad idea. You should do investments because they are good investments for you.
Hmm.
Do not do the investing because there's a tax benefit, because tax benefits come and go. You don't know. This government gives it, some other takes it away. So you stay with your ideal products that suit you, and then in that, if there is a tax uh, advantaged product, you go for that. But this whole thing of buy this insurance policy because there's a tax break, people have got used to this way of sort of investing. It doesn't work. It harms you really.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So before I wrap it up, because we've almost
Yeah.
going to be touching the hour mark. So any last things that you think we did not cover that we should cover, maybe?
No, I think it's been fairly comprehensive. We've um, ticked all the boxes. We talked of the deficit. We talked of taxation. I think we've sort of covered most of it.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Then great. Great. We'll wrap it up. So Monica, as always, thank you for coming on the podcast. देखो मैंने मैंने मेरी वजह से आपका आपके नेक इश्यूज नहीं होंगे मैं
No, 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 not at all, not at all.
so thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you when I visit Delhi this month.
Definitely. Look forward. All right. Bye bye.
Bye. All right, guys, let's wrap this podcast up. But before we wrap it up, once again, in the description, you will see Monica's Twitter account and the link to buy her book, Let's Talk About Money. I would highly recommend, if you have not bought that book, please go and buy that book and follow her on social media. As far as I'm concerned, you know the drill. Please subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment in the comment section. If possible, as I always say, this is a member driven YouTube podcast. This podcast survives on members, so please become a member, whether on YouTube or on Patreon or on Fanmore, depending on your choice. I'll try my best to keep on bringing new and interesting subjects as always. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care, bye.